April 23rd, 2019, 11:47 p.m. I held the Glock 19 in my right hand, same weapon I'd used to save Richard Caldwell's life 4 times in 6 years. This time, the barrel pointed directly at his chest. "Isaiah," he said, hands raised. "We can talk about this." We couldn't. Not anymore. Not after what I'd discovered. "My sister," I said, voice calm, hand steady. "Melissa, 32 years old, Oxycontin overdose, 2017. Do you remember her?" Sim 6 didn't change. Of course he didn't remember her. She was just a number, one of 73,000. "Isaiah, I didn't, unborn." I tightened my grip. "When you hired me 6 years ago, you already knew my sister died from your opioids. You investigated me. You knew everything. And you still put me in charge of protecting you." The silence in that 42nd floor office was absolute. "Windshield. Why?" I asked. "Of all the bodyguards in the world, why me?" Finally, Richard smiled. "Because," he said, "keep your enemies close." 6 years earlier, March 12, 2013, that's the day I became Richard Caldwell's personal security detail. Salmon in the lobby of Caldwell Pharmaceuticals headquarters, glass and steel tower in Midtown Manhattan that probably cost more than my entire neighborhood in Brooklyn. My Navy SEAL dress uniform felt tight after 3 months of civilian life. I'd left the service in December, honorable discharge. 8 years protecting American interests overseas. Now I was protecting American billionaires. Combating was good. $120,000 annually, health insurance, retirement plan, everything my sister Melissa needed while she recovered from her back surgery. Mr. Grant, a woman in an expensive suit, approached. Executive assistant type, perfectly styled hair. "Mr. Caldwell will see you now." I followed her to the private elevator, 42nd floor, executive suite. Richard Caldwell sat behind a desk the size of my apartment. "They're investigating, but I need someone closer, someone I can trust absolutely." He studied me. "Can I trust you, Isaiah?" "Yes, sir." "Good. You start tomorrow, 7 a.m. I stood, shook his hand again. Left that office thinking I'd just landed the perfect job. Good pay, straightforward protection detail, clean. First assassination attempt happened 3 weeks later, April 2nd, 2013, 7:38 p.m. We were leaving a charity gala at the Plaza Hotel, black tie event, 500 guests. Caldwell had given a speech about his company's commitment to affordable health care. Everyone applauded. Nobody mentioned that his company had raised insulin prices by 400% in 5 years. Shortest, I was 2 steps ahead of Caldwell, scanning the crowd as we exited. Standard protection formation. His driver was pulling the Mercedes S-Class to the curb, 30 feet away. Willingness. That's when I saw him. White male, late 30s, black peacoat, hands in pockets, standing too still in a moving crowd, eyes locked on Caldwell. "Stay behind me," I told Caldwell. Moved my hand inside my jacket, Glock 19 in shoulder holster. Tightening, the man's right hand came out of his pocket. Something metallic flashed. I didn't think. 8 years of training took over. I stepped between Caldwell and the threat, drew my weapon, aim center mass. "Gun! Down on the ground! Now!" The man froze. His hand was holding a phone, not a weapon, just a phone. But I saw his left hand still in his pocket, saw his finger on something. "Show me your left hand." Security from the hotel was moving toward us. NYPD starting to respond. The man pulled his left hand out slowly. He was holding a detonator. I had maybe 2 seconds to make a decision: shoot an unarmed man in front of 500 witnesses, or risk a bomb that could kill dozens. I squeezed the trigger. The shot hit his left shoulder. He went down. The detonator clattered across the pavement. Security tackled him before he could reach for it. Bomb squad arrived 12 minutes later, confirmed the detonator was real. The shooter's name was David Martinez, 41 years old, former pharmaceutical sales rep. His daughter had died from an opioid overdose 6 months earlier. He blamed Caldwell Pharmaceuticals for aggressively marketing OxyContin to doctors, despite knowing its addiction potential. Misery? His daughter's name was Sarah Martinez, 23 years old, college graduate. Got prescribed painkillers after wisdom teeth surgery. Was dead from an overdose 8 months later. I read the police report, read the letter Martinez had written explaining his actions. He wasn't insane. He was grieving, desperate, trying to make someone pay for his daughter's death. I understood that grief. My sister Melissa had back surgery in 2011, got prescribed the same painkillers. She was supposed to take them for 2 weeks. She was still taking them 18 months later. But Martinez had tried to kill my principal. That's how I trained myself to think. Principal, not Richard, not Caldwell. Principal, the person I was paid to protect. I testified at Martinez's trial. He got 15 years for attempted murder. I watched them take him away in handcuffs. He looked at me once. No anger, just exhaustion. Caldwell gave me a $50,000 bonus for saving his life. I used it to pay for Melissa's addiction treatment. 30 days inpatient. It didn't work. Jeremiah. Over the next year, I settled into the job, learned Caldwell's routines. 7 a.m. arrival at the office, lunch meetings at Danielle, La Bernardin, or 11, Madison Park. Evening events 3 to 4 nights per week. Gym sessions, Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Weekly trips to his estate in the Hamptons. I was good at the job, maintained situational awareness, identified potential threats before they materialized, coordinated with venue security, planned multiple exit routes. Shalmi trusted me, started asking my opinion on non-security matters, which car to take, which events to attend. Sometimes he'd talk during our drives about his company, his vision, his frustrations with regulations and activists who don't understand pharmaceutical economics. Projectile. Do you know what it costs to develop a new drug, Isaiah? Without them. But that wasn't my problem. My problem was keeping Richard Caldwell alive. That's what he paid me $120,000 a year to do. I was very good at my problem. Melissa died on December 18, 2017. I got the call at 6:22 a.m. My cousin, Janelle. Melissa hadn't shown up for their breakfast. Janelle went to her apartment, found her on the bathroom floor. Paramedics said she'd been dead for 6 hours. Overdose. OxyContin mixed with fentanyl. The coroner said she probably didn't know the pills were contaminated with fentanyl. A lot of street pills were by then. Dealers cutting oxy with fentanyl because it was cheaper and more addictive. She was 32 years old. Jiang I took 1 week off. Caldwell sent flowers. Generous bouquet. Card that said, deepest condolences. $5,000 donation to a charity in Melissa's name. Suppressing I came back to work on December 27th. Caldwell asked if I was okay. I said yes. He didn't push. We went back to the routine. But something had changed. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The protesters outside Caldwell Pharmaceuticals headquarters. holding signs. 73,000 dead. Stop killing our children. Profits over lives. I'd always dismissed them as misinformed activists. Now I read their signs carefully. Learned that 73,000 Americans had died from opioid overdoses in 2017. Learned that Caldwell Pharmaceuticals was one of the top 5 manufacturers of prescription opioids. I started paying attention to Caldwell's phone calls, the ones he took in the back of the Mercedes while I drove, his tone with FDA officials, with senators, with company lawyers. Crimson. We need to push back on these dosage limits. We're talking about pain patients who need effective treatment. Yes, I understand the addiction concerns, but that's a matter of patient education, not product liability. I started connecting dots I'd been trained to ignore. Missing. Melissa got her first prescription from April 15, 2018. The second attempt happened at Caldwell's estate in the Hamptons. We'd driven out Friday afternoon. Caldwell liked working from his home office on weekends. Fewer distractions, better view. The estate sat on 4 acres of oceanfront property, worth approximately $47 million. I stayed in the guest house, 500 square feet, comfortable. Close enough to respond to threats, but far enough for privacy. Immigration night, 11:15 p.m. I was reviewing security camera footage from the perimeter when I caught movement near the main house. Someone, approaching from the beach, dressed in black, moving with purpose. I grabbed my Glock, radio to notify Caldwell. No answer. Immigration, I moved fast. Crossed the lawn in 40 seconds, entered through the kitchen door, kept my weapon low and ready. The intruder was already inside, 2nd floor. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside Caldwell's bedroom. Crimson did the stairs, 3 at a time. Came around the corner just as the intruder pushed open Caldwell's door. Freeze! Hands where I can see them! The intruder spun. Female, late 20s, black clothing. Something in her right hand. I had the angle, clear shot, but something made me hesitate. She wasn't holding a gun. She was holding a photograph. Please, she said, voice shaking. I just need to talk to him. Shimmer, that, now. She dropped the photo, raised her hands. My brother, Tyler Chin, he was 26. Caldwell's drugs killed him. Caldwell appeared in his doorway, silk robe, completely calm despite the woman who'd broken into his home. Immigration, call the police. Jiang. I kept my weapon trained on the woman. Down on the ground, face down, hands behind your back. She complied, started crying. You don't understand. They knew. The company knew Oxycontin was addictive. They lied to doctors. They paid doctors to prescribe it. My brother got hurt at work. Construction accident. They gave him pills for 2 weeks. He was dead in 18 months. Mismatch. That's tragic, Caldwell said on his jacket. He looked like guys I'd served with. Good people. Hard-working. The kind who deserve better than dying on a bathroom floor because they trusted their doctor. After the police left, Caldwell poured himself scotch. Offered me one. This time I accepted. You hesitated, he said. Sir? When you came around that corner, you had a clear shot at an armed intruder, but you hesitated. She wasn't armed. You didn't know that until after you hesitated. He sipped his drink. That hesitation could have cost my life. It didn't. Misunderstand. He studied me. Isaiah, I need to know you're still committed to this job, that your sister's death hasn't compromised your judgment. The question hit like a punch. Xiaomi is fine. Because if you're having doubts, I understand. This is difficult work. The people who threaten me often have tragic stories, dead relatives, financial ruin. They need someone to blame. Usually they choose me. He refilled his glass. But their pain doesn't justify violence. You understand that, right? Yes, sir. Good. Because I need you, Isaiah. You're the best protection I've ever had. I trust you. I don't want to lose that trust over misplaced sympathy for people who break into my home. Missouri didn't. Finished my drink. Returned to the guest house. But I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about Michelle Chen, about David Martinez, about all the people who'd lost family members and decided the only justice they could get was the kind that came from their own hands. I understood their anger, their desperation. I also understood they were wrong. Violence wasn't justice. It was just more tragedy. But something bothered me about Caldwell's question. Your sister's death hasn't compromised your judgment. He'd said it so casually, like Melissa's overdose was weather, random, nobody's fault. Except it wasn't random. She got addicted to a product. That product was manufactured by Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, marketed aggressively, prescribed liberally. I started doing research, late nights after Caldwell was asleep, using my personal laptop, not company equipment. I found the leaked documents Michelle Chen had mentioned. They'd been published by anonymous sources, internal Caldwell Pharmaceuticals emails from 2007 through 2012. Subject: OxyContin market expansion. We need to be aggressive with doctor outreach. The competition is fierce. Consider increasing speaker fees for high-volume prescribers. Another email. Subject: response to FDA concerns about addiction rates. The addiction issue is overblown. Media hysteria. We should push back hard on any narrative that suggests our product is dangerous when used as prescribed. Except the emails also showed that Caldwell executives knew exactly how often OxyContin was being prescribed outside normal parameters. Knew that doctors were giving 90-day prescriptions for conditions that should require 2 weeks maximum. Revise. They knew, and they didn't just allow it, they encouraged it. Subject: Q3 sales targets. Exceptional work by the sales team. OxyContin prescriptions up 37% year over year. Let's maintain this momentum. Misinformation. Dead. 37% growth. Momentum. I found articles about lawsuits. Families suing Caldwell Pharmaceuticals for wrongful death. Cases settled quietly. Non-disclosure agreements. Nobody allowed to talk about what the company had done. Imientos. I found testimony from former sales reps describing how they were trained to downplay addiction risks, how they were given bonuses based on prescription volume, how they were taught to target doctors in areas with higher pain medication use. I found the data. Opioid prescriptions mapped by zip code. Highest concentrations in poor communities, rural areas, places where people couldn't afford expensive treatments, so they got pills instead. Plumbing, like where Melissa lived. I was still doing my job, still showing up, still protecting Caldwell. But now I saw him differently, not as my principal, as the person responsible for my sister's death. Every time he talked about pharmaceutical economics, I thought about Melissa stealing from attempt. Answer that question. September 9th, 2018. 6 months after Michelle Chen broke into the Hamptons estate. We were at a pharmaceutical industry conference in Chicago, McCormick Place, 3,000 attendees. Caldwell was giving a keynote about innovation in pain management. I was backstage. Standard protocol. Monitoring the crowd through security cameras. 250 people in the auditorium. Most of them pharmaceutical executives, sales reps, marketing directors. I spotted her in the third row. Female, early 40s, black blazer, hands in her lap. But something about her posture was wrong. Too rigid, too focused. I radioed venue security. Third row left side, woman in black blazer. Watch your hands. Privilege was mid-sentence. And that's why we must continue to advocate for patient access to effective pain medication, despite the political pressure from Missiles stood up. Murderer! The room went silent. Security started moving toward her, but I saw her right hand go into her blazer. Missionary, I was already running. Calculated the distance, 30 feet, 4 seconds. She pulled something from her jacket. Small, dark. Could be a gun, could be a phone. In that split second, I had to decide whether to shoot an unarmed woman or let her possibly shoot Caldwell. I tackled her before I had to make that choice. Brought her down hard. Her hand opened. A book fell out. Not a weapon, just a book. Murk cover showed a young woman's photo. Below it, in memory of Jessica Torres, 19 years old, killed by Oxycontin. Security surrounded us, pulled me off her, restrained the woman. She wasn't fighting, just crying. He killed my daughter, she said, looking directly at Caldwell. You killed her. You knew those pills were addictive. You lied to her doctor. You killed her and you made millions doing it. Caldwell adjusted his tie, returned to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. This is unfortunately what we deal with. November 3rd, 2018. I found the evidence by accident. Caldwell had asked me to retrieve a document from his home office, contract he'd forgotten. Needed it for a meeting the next morning. He gave me the code to his safe. Titanium was right where he said it would be, but underneath it were folders, marked internal use only. I should have closed the safe, taken the contract, minded my business. Didn't. The first folder contained financial projections from 2008, before Oxycontin became their flagship product. Caldwell Pharmaceuticals had been struggling, stock price down 42%, layoffs pending. The company was 3/4 away from bankruptcy. Stimulate the projections after Oxycontin marketing expansion. Revenue up 360%, stock price up 800%, from nearly bankrupt to $7 billion valuation. Presumption didn't just save the company, it made Richard Caldwell a billionaire. The second folder was worse. Immigration research from 2006, before Oxycontin was widely marketed. Studies showing addiction rates at 23% among long-term users. Studies showing that patients were using the medication far longer than prescribed. Studies showing overdose deaths were increasing in direct correlation with prescription rates. Fractional research was completed before the aggressive marketing campaign, before the sales targets, before 73,000 deaths, combating. Years before my sister got her first prescription, they knew exactly how dangerous Oxycontin was, and they sold it anyway. The third folder contained something that made my hands shake. Armstrong, Mays, names, dates, causes of death. It was a tracking document. Caldwell Pharmaceuticals had been monitoring overdose deaths connected to their products, keeping internal records, not for safety purposes, for liability management. Immigration. The list had 347 names. Looking for one name, knowing I'd find it, dreading it. There. Brooks Melissa, age 32, December 18th, 2017. Oxycontin and fentanyl. Overdose. They knew my sister was one. Do nothing. Keep protecting Caldwell. Collect my salary. Pretend I'd never seen those documents. Option 2, quit. Walk away. Find different work. Let someone else protect the killer. Option 3, go to the authorities. Turn over the evidence. Let the legal system handle it. 4, do what David Martinez and Michelle Chin tried to do. Take justice into my own hands. I sat with those options for 6 hours. Didn't sleep, didn't eat, just thought. Crimson 1 was cowardice. I couldn't unknow what I knew. Reigning. 2 was abandonment. Those 347 people deserved better than me just walking away. Option 3 was naive. Caldwell had armies of lawyers, political connections. The evidence I'd photographed was probably inadmissible. Obtained without a warrant, from a private safe. Any decent lawyer would get it thrown out. Immigration. 4, murder. That's what it would be. Not justice, not defense. Murder, premeditated, first degree. I'd spend the rest of my life in prison. My family would never understand. I'd become exactly what Martinez and Chin became. Desperate people who solved pain with violence. But 347 people were dead, including my sister, and Richard Caldwell was going to give another keynote speech tomorrow about pharmaceutical innovation. I made my decision. I planned it for 3 weeks, studied his routine, identified the pattern. Thursday nights, Caldwell worked late at his home office. His housekeeper left at 7 p.m. His driver went off duty at 8 p.m. From 8 p.m. to midnight, he was alone in his apartment. Just him and me. No witnesses. No cameras in his private office. No one would know exactly what happened except the two of us. I would make him understand why before I pulled the trigger. I needed him to know this wasn't random. This was consequence. Glazed, November 22nd, 2018. Thursday, 7:15 p.m. The housekeeper left. I watched her walk to the elevator. Friendly wave. She liked me. Thought I was a good man doing an honest job. 8 p.m. The driver texted that he was heading home. Told me to have a good night. I checked my Glock 19. Full magazine, 15 rounds. I'd only need one. 30 p.m. I walked to Caldwell's office. Knocked twice. Come in. He was at his desk, laptop open, glass of scotch beside him. He looked up and smiled. Sidelines, Isaiah, what can I do for you? I closed the door behind me, locked it. Smile faded. Is everything all right? I pulled out my weapon, aimed it at his chest. Isaiah, what are you doing? My sister, I said. Melissa, 32 years old, Oxycontin overdose, December 18th, 2017. Do you remember her? His face didn't change. I don't know what you're talking about. Sluggish. You do. You have a file in your safe. 347 names. People who died from your products. You tracked them, documented them, filed them away like inventory. Now his expression changed. Calculation. He was realizing how much I knew. Isaiah, you don't understand the complexity. Don't. My hand was steady. Don't tell me I don't understand. I understand perfectly. You knew Oxycontin was addictive. You knew people were dying. Another step. Isaiah, you're a smart man. You've protected me for 6 years. You know I'm not a monster. I'm a businessman. I make products. Doctors prescribe them. Patients take them. If something goes wrong in that chain, it's not my responsibility. 347 people are dead. 73,000 people died from opioid overdoses last year. You think that's all Caldwell Pharmaceuticals? We're one company, one product. You want someone to blame. Blame the DEA for not regulating prescriptions. Blame the FDA for approving the medications. Blame the insurance companies that won't pay for alternative pain treatments. Blame the doctors who overprescribe. In prison. He was close now, 10 feet, within range if he decided to attack. But don't blame me for providing a product that doctors and patients wanted. Don't blame me for your sister's choices. Aggression. That's when I understood something that changed everything. He really believed it. This wasn't a performance. Richard Caldwell genuinely thought he wasn't responsible. He'd constructed a worldview where he was just a businessman providing products, where addiction and death were unfortunate side effects, not his fault, not his problem. He didn't see the 347 names as people. He saw them as statistics, acceptable losses in the pursuit of profit. And that's why I couldn't kill him. Because if I did, he'd die believing he was the victim, murdered by an unhinged employee. He'd never understand why, never accept responsibility, never face real consequence. One bullet would end his life, but it wouldn't create justice, just more violence, more tragedy. I lowered my weapon. Abandonment. I'm not going to kill you, I said, remodeling his face. Good. That's good, Isaiah. You're making the right, but I'm going to destroy you. The relief vanished. I have photos of those documents, the internal research, the tracking list, the financial projections, all of it. And I'm going to give them to every journalist, every lawyer, every prosecutor who will take them. You want to blame everyone else? I could find. By morning, the photos were with the New York Times, Washington Post, and 4 law firms specializing in wrongful death litigation. By afternoon, Caldwell Pharmaceutical stock had dropped 37%. By evening, the FBI had opened an investigation. I was fired, obviously. Arrested for theft of proprietary information. My lawyer said I'd probably get 2 to 5 years. I didn't care, because for the first time in 6 years, I'd chosen justice over loyalty, and that was worth whatever came next. They arrested me on November 24th, Saturday morning, 2 days after I'd leaked the documents. Federal agents, search warrant for my apartment. They took my laptop, my phone, my backup drives, everything. The charges: theft of proprietary information, corporate espionage, violation of non-disclosure agreement, illegal wiretapping. Mails was set at $500,000. I didn't have it. Public defender said I'd be in holding until trial. Estimated timeline, 8 to 12 months. I didn't care. The documents were already out there. Journalists were reporting. Lawyers were filing lawsuits. The FBI was investigating Caldwell Pharmaceuticals' marketing practices. Nothing they did to me would change that. What I didn't expect was what happened next. 3 days into my holding, I got a visitor. Not my lawyer, not family. Michelle Chen, the woman who'd broken into Caldwell's Hamptons estate, the one I'd arrested 6 months earlier. Tightening, she sat across from me in the visitation room, glass partition between us, phones on the wall. "Why are you here?" I asked. "Because you did what I couldn't." Her voice was quiet. "You got the evidence out. You exposed him. I'm going to prison for it." "I know. I went to prison too. 6 months for breaking and entering. Got out last month." She leaned forward. "But it was worth it. Because now people know the truth. The lawsuits are piling up. The FBI is investigating. Caldwell's board first. Federal Court, Southern District of New York. Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. The prosecution's case was straightforward. I had broken into my employer's safe, stolen proprietary documents, violated my non-disclosure agreement, leaked confidential information to the press. All of it was true. My lawyer didn't deny any of it. Instead, he argued necessity defense, that I'd committed a minor crime to prevent a greater harm, that the documents revealed ongoing criminal activity, that I had a duty to expose it. The prosecution called it vigilante justice, said I should have gone through proper channels, reported to the FBI, let the legal system work. My lawyer pointed out that the FBI had known about opioid marketing practices for years and done nothing, that proper channels had failed 73,000 people. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Transporting, Richard Caldwell testified, wearing a conservative suit, playing the wronged employer, talking about how he'd trusted me, given me opportunities, treated me like family. And this is how he repaid that trust, Caldwell said, by violating my privacy, stealing from me, trying to destroy my company and my reputation. When my lawyer cross-examined him, things changed. "Mr. Caldwell, were you aware that Isaiah Grant's sister Melissa died from an Oxycontin overdose?" "I was made aware after her death, yes." "And you continued to employ him?" "Of course. Her death was a personal tragedy. It had nothing to do with his professional capabilities." "Tuition. Did you know your company maintained a list of overdose deaths, including Melissa Grant's name?" Caldwell hesitated. "We tracked adverse events related to our products. That's standard pharmaceutical practice. 347 names, 347 deaths, and you kept employing the brother of one of those deaths to protect you. Didn't that seem like a conflict of interest? I trusted him to remain professional. Or you trusted that he didn't know his sister's death was in your files, that he didn't know you actual time served." I could live with that, but something happened between the verdict and sentencing. The FBI finished their investigation of Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. Federal grand jury returned indictments on 47 counts: wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, bribery of federal officials, illegal kickbacks to physicians, misbranding of pharmaceuticals. Richard Caldwell was arrested on December 19, 2018, one day after the first anniversary of Melissa's death. His bail was set at $50 million. He posted it immediately. Trial date, April 15, 2019. The prosecution's case was built on the documents I'd leaked, plus everything else the FBI found once they started looking. Thousands of pages of evidence, testimony from former employees, emails, financial records. It was overwhelming. Caldwell's lawyers tried to get my documents excluded. Illegal search, fruit of the poisonous tree. Imientos ruled against them, said the documents revealed ongoing criminal activity, said I'd acted as a whistleblower, not a thief. Disregard my conviction was meaningless. The prosecutor's office filed a motion to vacate my sentence, said I'd been acting in the public interest. Crimson Morrison agreed. Revenge. On January 7th, 2019, she vacated my conviction, sealed my record, and issued a formal apology on behalf of the court. Imientos. I walked out of that courthouse a free man. Caldwell was still facing 47 federal counts and 753 wrongful death lawsuits. The trial started on April 15th as scheduled. I attended every day, sat in the gallery with Michelle Chen, Jessica Torres' mother, David Martinez's wife, and 214 other families. We watched prosecutors present the evidence, the internal research showing Caldwell knew about addiction risks, the marketing strategies targeting vulnerable populations, the payments to doctors, the bribes to FDA officials. We watched Caldwell take the stand and claim he'd been misled by his executives, that he trusted his marketing team, that he'd never personally approved any illegal activities, paid doctors to prescribe it. You bribed officials to ignore safety concerns, and when people started dying, you tracked their deaths like inventory. She paused. The prosecution is recommending 30 years. Your lawyers are asking for 5 years with house arrest. I've reviewed the evidence, I've heard the testimony, and I've read letters from 753 families who lost loved ones to your product. Immigration was absolutely silent. I sentence you to 27 years in federal prison. No parole, no early release. Caldwell's face went white. His lawyers immediately started talking about appeals, but Judge Morrison wasn't finished. Additionally, I'm ordering the complete dissolution of Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. All assets will be liquidated. Proceeds will go to a fund for addiction treatment and support for families affected by opioid addiction. Mr. Caldwell, you will also forfeit your personal assets, your homes, your cars, your investments, all of it. She looked at him with something close to contempt. Migration. You built an empire on the bodies of 73,000 dead Americans. I'm making sure that empire dies with your freedom. Misinformation took him into custody. He looked back once as they led him out. His eyes found mine in the gallery. No anger, no defiance. Just the hollow realization that he'd finally faced consequences. After the sentencing, the families gathered outside the courthouse. Media everywhere. Cameras, reporters, questions. Michelle Chen stood at the microphone first. My brother Tyler died believing he was weak, that his addiction was his fault, that he'd failed himself and our family. Her voice broke. Today we learned the truth. His death wasn't his fault. It was Richard Caldwell's fault. And for the first time since Tyler died, I can breathe. Jessica Torres' mother spoke next, then David Martinez's wife, then 12 other families. Dismissing me to speak, I almost said no. I wasn't a victim. I was just someone who'd done what should have been done years earlier. Shields, I thought about Melissa, about how she'd died thinking she was broken, how she'd apologized to me the last time I saw her, said she was sorry for being weak, for letting me down. I stepped to the microphone. Shields, Melissa died on December 18th, 2017. She was 32 years old, beautiful, smart, funny. She loved terrible reality TV and made the best macaroni and cheese I've ever eaten. I had to stop, breathe. She got hurt. A doctor prescribed her pills. She took them as directed. and 18 months later, she was dead. I looked directly at the cameras. For 2 years, I blamed her, thought she was weak, thought she'd made bad choices. Then I found out the truth. The pills were designed to be addictive. The company knew it. They marketed them anyway. They paid her doctor to prescribe them. And when she died, they added her name to a list and kept selling. My voice was steady now, clear. Crimson's death wasn't her fault. It was Richard Caldwell's fault. And today, finally, he answered for it, stepped back from the microphone. Michelle hugged me, then Jessica's mother, then dozens of other people whose names I didn't know, but whose pain I understood completely. We stood outside that courthouse for 3 hours, sharing stories, crying, laughing, remembering the people we'd lost. For the first time since Melissa died, 73,000 people were still dead. It was something. I tried going back to security work. A few companies offered positions, corporate protection, executive details, and I turned them all down and started working with the families, helping them navigate the legal system, connecting them with lawyers, testifying at hearings, sharing the story of what I'd found and why I'd leaked it. It didn't pay well, mostly speaking fees and small grants from advocacy organizations. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens, drove a 10-year-old Honda, ate a lot of takeout, but I slept better than I had in years. Richard Caldwell appealed his conviction, claimed ineffective counsel, improper evidence, judicial bias. JFK was denied. He was currently serving his sentence at FCI Otisville in upstate New York. Medium security, no special treatment, just another inmate in orange. Unmistaked 3 letters from him. I threw away the first 2 without reading them. The third one arrived last week. I opened it. Jang, I know you won't believe this, but I never intended for anyone to die. I created a product. Doctors prescribed it. Patients took it. What happened after that wasn't my responsibility. Disproportionately, my life over a technicality. I was doing business the way everyone does business. You just happened to have access to documents that made it look worse than it was. Homelessness. I hope you're happy. You got your revenge, but you didn't get justice. Justice would have been holding the doctors accountable, the dealers who cut pills with fentanyl, the patients who abused their prescriptions. Instead, you blame the person who was just trying to help people manage their pain. I'll be in here for 27 years. I'm 62 years old. I'll die in prison. I hope that gives you peace. Richard. I read it twice, then burned it. He still didn't understand. After everything, the trial, the evidence, the testimony from 753 families, he still believed he was the victim. That's the thing about people like Richard Caldwell. They can rationalize anything, justify anything. Michelle Chen asked me once if I regretted it. Breaking into the safe, leaking the documents, destroying my career in security. No, I said. I regret that it took me so long. You were just doing your job. That's the problem. I was so focused on protecting him that I didn't see what he was doing. Or maybe I saw it and chose to ignore it because the paycheck was good. Crimson nodded. I broke into his house because I was desperate. You broke into his safe because you were ready. There's a difference. Maybe-lized. But I'd spent 6 years standing next to a killer, watching him smile at cameras and shake hands with senators while 347 people died. That's not something I can undo. I can only try to make sure their deaths meant something. The fund created from Caldwell Pharmaceuticals' liquidated assets totaled $9.3 billion. Every penny went to addiction treatment programs, family support services, and research into non-addictive pain management. Shields, it wasn't nearly enough, but it was something. Shimmer, I'd been asked to serve on the board overseeing the fund's distribution. I accepted. Every month, we reviewed applications from treatment centers, research facilities, and family advocacy groups. Decided where the money would do the most good. It was the hardest work I'd ever done. Every application represented real people, real pain, real need. But it was also the most meaningful work, because for the first time in my life, I was part of something that helped instead of protected. I thought about David Martinez sometimes, the first person who tried to kill Caldwell, the man I'd stopped. He was out of prison now, 15-year sentence reduced to 9 for good behavior. We'd met for coffee once. "Do you regret it?" I asked him. "Trying to kill him? No. Failing? Every day." He stirred his coffee slowly. I wanted him dead because I couldn't imagine any other justice. Prison seemed too easy, too comfortable. Was I wrong, stopping you? He considered that for a long time. No, because if you'd let me kill him, he'd have crying at that courthouse. That part wanted him dead. But killing him would have been easy, quick, final. Making him face justice was harder, longer, more painful for both of us. Last week, I received an email from someone I didn't recognize. Subject line, "Thank you. Missions, Mr. Grant. You don't know me, but you saved my life. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm Michelle Chen's niece, Tyler's daughter. I was 8 years old when my dad died. I didn't understand addiction. I just knew my dad was gone and it was somehow his fault. I'm 19 now, in college, studying to be a pharmacist. Because of what you did, I learned the truth about how my dad died. It wasn't his fault. He was targeted, manipulated, killed by people who chose profit over human life. I'm going to spend my career making sure what happened to him doesn't happen to anyone else. I'm going to be the kind of pharmacist who questions prescriptions, who educates patients, who prioritizes health over sales. You gave me that purpose. You gave me the truth. And I wanted to thank you, Sarah, immature." I read that email 5 times, and I printed it out and put it on my refrigerator next to the photo of Melissa. Smith is why I did it. Not for revenge, not for justice in some abstract sense. For people like Sarah, who deserve to know the truth, who deserve to understand that their loved ones weren't weak or broken, they were victims. Today, standing at Melissa's grave with 43 families who understood my pain, I finally said the words I'd needed to say for 2 years. I'm sorry it took me so long. I'm sorry I protected him while you died. I'm sorry I didn't see the truth sooner. The wind picked up, cold December air, same weather as the day she died. But I see it now, and I'm going to make sure everyone else sees it too. I'm going to make sure your death, all of your deaths, meant something. Michelle put her hand on my shoulder. They already do. Wilmington, but I wasn't done yet. I visit Melissa's grave every December 18th. I tell her about the families I've helped, the treatment centers we funded, the research we're supporting. I tell her about Richard Caldwell rotting in prison, about how his empire was destroyed, about how 73,000 names finally became more than statistics, presumption. I tell her about Sarah Chen studying to be a pharmacist, about David Martinez finding peace, about Michelle Chen starting a foundation in her brother's name. I tell her that her death wasn't her fault, that she wasn't weak, that she was targeted by people who saw her as a market opportunity instead of a human being. And I tell her that I'm sorry for taking so long to understand, for protecting the man who killed her, for being blind to the truth. Then I leave flowers and walk away, back to the work, back to the fight, because that's all I can do now. Make sure the next person who gets prescribed opioids knows the risks. Make sure the next family who loses someone to addiction knows they're not alone. Make sure the next pharmaceutical executive who prioritizes profit over human life faces consequences. I was Richard Caldwell's bodyguard for 6 years. I protected him from threats. And now I protect people from men like him. It's harder work, pays less, offers no retirement plan. Misunderstand at night. I can face my reflection, can think about Melissa without drowning in guilt. That's worth more than any salary Richard Caldwell ever paid me. See you there.